So, Deputy Connolly.
Thank you very much, Chair. Gurmila Magat. And just, Mr. Kelly, just you mentioned progress, and you identified a number of very specific ones that you report directly to the Commissioner. Is that in a formal way or formal meeting set up that you report to the Commissioner?
It's both formal and informal, like I have on occasions.
When was that set up, and how many times have you reported?
It has come into effect since about August, September this year. Okay. And I have met with the Executive Board on at least 2 occasions so far, which is the Commissioner, the CAO and the Deputy Commissioner.
So how many times have you met with the Commissioner since September?
Well, I would have
Are these
informal meetings.
Yeah, how many?
I think we had 1 formal meeting since September and quite a number of informal meetings.
And in relation to the new situation where the Executive Board are to meet with you 4 times a year, when did that start?
I've had 2 of those meetings so far. So I had one about 3 weeks ago, and I had one about September, the beginning of September. Okay. And
there's a new directive that items of concern are brought directly to you. When did that come into effect?
That came into effect, I think, March, April of this year.
Okay. And have items of concern been brought to your attention?
They have.
Okay. Would you like to elaborate on those items of concern?
I'd rather not, because these are ongoing audits or ongoing work. When I have a report, in the normal way, it'll come through the Controller and Auditor General, and this committee will.
So you're not in a position at the moment to elaborate on those items of concern. Are they new matters that are coming to your attention? Are they items of concern in relation to the legacy as it's been described here?
There would be a range of different issues that have come to. They would fall into both categories.
Okay. Are they governance issues? Or?
They would be governance issues,
so ongoing governance issues still?
Well, I think we'll always have ongoing governance issues. We'll never get it perfect.
Okay. When do you think you will be in a position to report on these items of concern that have been brought to your attention?
They will come in the normal course of our audit work.
Just explain to me what that is.
They will be included in our audit plans and will come as audit reports. Some of the items may never. I might think, some people have, concerns, but when you look into them, maybe they're not as.
Mr. Kelly, no, I'm asking you just specifically items of concern. A new system has been set up. That's very welcome. Because that was some of the problem, that there was no mechanism where items of concern could be brought. Now I'm hearing something very positive. There's a mechanism in place. Items of concern, I'm asking you, you said they're serious items of concern. I understand you're not in a position to elaborate at this point. So I really don't want to go down about someone. I'm just responding to your answer. Items of concern, and you can't elaborate at this point, but you will in due course.
I will.
Okay, Mr. Barrett, just remind me, you're head of human resources.
Yes.
And are you on the finance committee? Is that right?
No, but I have a little knowledge.
Oh no, I didn't mean that. I was only so many times. Sorry, I just this confusion over so many reports. I was only trying to establish.
No. I would have. A good knowledge of.
That's okay. I wasn't questioning your knowledge. I was only trying to establish where you fitted into the picture.
No.
So you have. You've been praised by this committee in the past by members for your directness and for your concern and your attention to detail. What's your opinion now in relation to progress?
Well, I would pay tribute to the acting commissioner. I think he's been very true to the improvements in transparency, the commitments that are made generally to creating a climate where people can come forward with, issues of concern. I think that's been a visible change, even in the very short time that he's been leading the organisation. I think the informality that Niall talked about in relation to his rapport with the acting commissioner would be similar to my own experience, and I think the organisation is better for that.
Are you concerned about any particular issues, or have items of concern been brought to your attention in the manner that they were brought to your attention before and you shared with us?
I've become a place where people feel they can go to raise concerns before the committee sat and since. And I treat.
We're all in that department.
I know you are. You do it for a living. I do it as a sort of a sideline.
Just my question.
No, but seriously,
just Mr. Barty,
it's a very important question.
Yes, I want you to answer the question.
Yes, I think there's been a greater amount of speaking out, and certainly, like Niall, I have been recipient of other concerns in terms of the number of people coming forward with things to say. I think that has increased, certainly since the committee sat in May.
Famous culture has changed where people...
It's slowly beginning to change.
Slowly.
It's a big ship. I think you need to understand 16,000 people makes us the second biggest employer.
I understand that. I'm only, it was specifically in relation to our role.
Yes, I think your role has had an impact.
Yes. Yeah, it was more my question to you now in relation to items of concern. Are there things being brought to your attention now that you want to bring to our attention in the manner that you did before?
No, because in general terms, there are people speaking out about all kinds of issues. I'll give you some of the general
Are you happy
heads.
that the mechanisms are now in place to allow you to do your work?
I think we're exploring the need to improve those mechanisms all the time. It's very dynamic. I think the number of people that speak up is increasing. I think therefore the amount of work, that investigative work, response work, conversations and dialogue, that as a proportion of people's time in my team is certainly increasing.
Okay. Now, just specifically in relation to just one or two matters, has the restaurant, and I heard the questions, is it now sorted out? Are those accounts audited now? Have all the difficulties with the restaurant, have the employees and the status of the employees been sorted out? No.
Deputy, let me first of all say there's a tremendous amount of work done in this area.
No, just answer my question, because I've only a few minutes.
I'm going there. I'm going there, please. The restaurant is moving into full public ownership and operation as such. Okay. The staff have been given draft contracts which they can sign. Yeah. They have raised a series of questions and we're in dialogue with their representatives.
And who will they be employed with by?
They will be employed, they'll be state employees, they'll be civil servants.
So that process is in being?
Yes.
And when will that process be completed?
Well, it's the ball now rests with the employees to come back with the contracts as signed. We're in... Sure.
No, we've moved beyond that. So we are at the stage of the sanctioning authorities, just the formal process of the sanctioning authorities. So the contracts are not formally signed, but they have been agreed in principle by the staff concerned, and that was just a necessary process.
And the accounts of the restaurant will come under the regular accounts?
Absolutely, it's through normal accounting processes.
Okay. In
2018?
Yes, for 2017.
I came in...
No, it's an operation, like the funding of the restaurant is coming through the normal expenditure of the Garda vote, yes.
Currently.
Yes.
In relation to the disclosure to the revenue for the, was it 32,000, is there any update on that from the revenue?
No, it's with the Revenue Commissioners.
How long is it with the Revenue Commissioners?
It's a number of... Yeah, it's months, so May.
Well, maybe somebody come back in a minute and tell me how long. Okay, in relation to the Drummard, is it Drummard farm, that's 252 acres. Is that right? 250. I want to come back to the Office of Public Works in relation to this. And that, so let's see, wait a second. Controller and Auditor General, sorry, Mr McCarthy, your concerns in relation to that land was in relation to the control and management of the land as opposed to the purchase of the land, is that correct? Or was it in relation to the purchase of the land?
Well, I outline in my report the sequence of events involved. My concern around the purchase was really around the evaluation of options available to the Garda Síochána in conjunction with OPW at the time they bought the land.
Okay, thank you.
There seemed to be a lot of chopping and changing about what was the priority, what were the requirements, what were the criteria for selection.
Whether it should be near to Templemore or further away. Yeah,
exactly.
I've seen that. So let's go back to the Office of Public Works in relation to 252 acres, which the state own. Is that correct?
Yes, the state
own. And so then you rent some of that out, a small portion of that out?
No, we rent all of that out currently.
Well, okay, we come to currently.
Yeah.
Going back...
Now, can I just clarify on that? It is still used by Garda Síochána for certain tactical issues, driving motorbikes, using woodland, etc. But it's being full-time farmed outside of tracks, etc.
At one point, you rented some of this out, isn't that right, to local farmers?
We rented back in 2000 and I'll just get my exact date. Back in 2007, we rented it all out.
Yeah.
In 2000,
all of it.
Yes.
Okay.
And all the, sorry, we're talking about all the grazing land.
Yeah, so it was only a small proportion of the 252 acres.
Well, there's grazing land and there's woodland, but the grazing land, we've rented all of it out.
At that time you did, and the money was gone back for the rent or the leasing of that land to the Office of Public Works.
Which was returned to the Exchequer then under appropriations.
At one point then it went to the Gardai Síochána and they were taking the lease, the money for that land,
correct.
Isn't that right?
Correct.
Okay. Has that been, it's now back under your remit?
It's back under our remit since 2014. And
the money that the Gardai Síochána received for the renting of that, have you received that?
We have indeed, yeah.
Okay. And
sorry? Yes, for the full period. Yeah, the full period in question.
okay. Now, I think that the Gardai Síochána, in fairness to them, wrote to you back in 2008 in relation to the arrangement, and there seems to be no response on record from you. Have you checked that for today or clarified?
I have looked at it and my staff have looked at it. There does appear to have been a breakdown in communication around about that time.
Yes.
And it resulted in on Gardai Síochána leasing the land or renting the land
and making use of the money for as they saw legitimately.
It would appear, yes.
But you didn't, not you, but the Office of Public Works didn't respond. You simply left.
I can't see a response from the Office of Public Works.
Is that acceptable?
It wouldn't be personally acceptable to me, and I hope it wouldn't happen now.
Okay. And the Controller and Auditor General has identified gaps in relation to the oversight of state land, and he has made recommendations in relation to how to go forward. Can you just tell me how you respond to that recommendation, or the deficit that he's identified in relation to the management of state lands?
Yeah, well, I think
particularly in the context of the farm.
Yes, and I think the recommendations are specifically in the context of the farm, but then moving outwards, as I understand the recommendation, it is about in general, there may need to be, or there is a need to consider what is the formal relationship between the Office of Public Works and people that we put in.
What are you doing about that is my question. How are you responding to that?
Yeah, what we're currently doing is we are looking at forms of occupancy agreements that we can put in place with people that we actually put in to our properties. I should say, however, that the majority of our clients, as we would describe them...
I read your response, and there's no difficulty normally, you're saying.
Exactly. We're 186 years in existence. They're mainly civil servants. They're subject to certain standards and audits, etc.
I have the greatest respect for the Office of Public Works. I think there's a vital role for you. But a gap has been identified here.
Yes.
And you didn't respond back in 2008.
Yes.
And money was received, according to the Guards, legitimately and used legitimately. But the issue was the absence was on your part. The gap was on the part of...
There was a gap.
So there is, and there's been a recommendation that you look actively at that, and you're saying you're now looking at an occupancy agreement, is it?
One of the recommendations was about the agreement
when will
between
that
ourselves.
Be in place?
As we put in specific clients into properties, we're looking at what is the most suitable arrangement.
There was also, I think, a recommendation or a suggestion. That farm was bought. It's obviously a very valuable asset now in terms of strategic planning. And there was a plan for that. It didn't happen.
Yes.
Have you a role in looking at that? I mean, the land was bought for a specific purpose.
Yes.
That purpose hasn't happened. Mind you, perhaps if it had happened and we had a centre of excellence, we mightn't have had the amount of difficulties we've had. But in any event.
Indeed. What we're specifically doing now, in conjunction with my colleagues in Gardai Síochána, is we're looking at coming up with a master plan for the needs of property needs around Templemore, the college, and the surrounding lands, and that would extend out to Dramard Farm as well.
What's the plan, this time scale?
Well, a master plan. I was only speaking very recently with the state architect, who's happy to embrace this, and it's really best practice that when there is a need for accommodation or training rooms or anything like this.
It's certainly best practice, so I accept that. I'm talking about what's the time frame for it.
Well, I would anticipate that over the next month, 2 months, the master planning process will commence.
Okay, I'm just watching my
Sure,
concern.
certainly.
Just in relation to the golf course, that's 37 acres.
Yes.
That's owned by the Office of Public Works.
yes, but it is leased to this Sports Field Company
That's right.
Limited on a 99-year lease.
Absolutely. And where are we in relation to that? And of course, various gaps have been identified by the Controller and Auditor General's chapter as well in relation to that, that a lease was given, there was no discussion with the Office of Public Works, there was no consideration given to buying back that lease. All of this has been identified, Commissioner. What is the current position in relation to the golf course in terms of back payment of the money due per year and so on? Has that all been paid up?
Is that
No? Okay.
The position has been engaging with the...
What is due, Mr Nugent? What is due?
It's the last figure I think was about 80,000, something of that order. 88,000 was the last figure. That will have increased.
And when was the last time any money was paid?
I don't know the exact figure, but it's many years ago.
Okay. Okay.
So you're asking what's the status of the golf club.
Yeah.
I think it's important to say a couple of things because there's a lot of uncertainty around this issue. The priority that the organisation has, as they're known, in Templemore, and that is in the process of conveyancing discussions between...
So just like it, so that the company, the Sportsfield company, has property. That property has to be transferred back.
Yes, that's correct.
And then the sports company is going to be wound up, which was one of the strong recommendations.
Absolutely,
of the
And
just one minute. Where are we at in that process? When is the company?
So the conveyancing, yes, that's what I was going to say. So the discussions are going on with the OPW and the Chief State Solicitor's Office on behalf of that, for that happening. It's just a question of how long does the conveyancing piece take. The issue, there are no obstacles. The company are not causing any obstacles. The Office of Public Works want to happen. It is a process issue. I can't give a time, but it's in that space.
Okay. In relation to the golf course.
As I said, the priority has been to resolve and address that issue. We have not addressed the question of the golf club today because we recognise that there are very significant complex issues that need to be resolved. The outcome of the discussions around the transfer of the sports field land are helping us inform ourselves about the most appropriate process to deal with that. As it stands, it's important. We have a very strong relationship with the people in Templemore. So we equally need to recognise that.
Just one second. I've met with people from Templemore actually,
Yes.
and in relation to the golf course, and I know it's a vital part of the community down
Yes.
there. I'm not questioning that.
Yes.
I'm questioning the amount of money due, why it remains outstanding. I'm asking for a confirmation of a time frame for the process of winding up the company, and so on. At this point, the interim report was last February, was it, Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was, and the transfer of lands take a huge amount of time, Deputy, so it means I
The
can't...
back pay of money.
But just step back for a second. The transfer of lands takes an extraordinary amount of time.
Okay.
So that from that perspective, that's been the primary focus about addressing that issue. We will then, engage with the golf club around, and we are very conscious of the money that is outstanding to the state in respect to the rental of the land, and we'll be having those engagements. I expect there'll be engagement with the golf club sometime later this year.
Deputy McSharry.
Thank you.